what kind of qualities of learning materials, what we call affective qualities, can we use? And those are the qualities that are able to cause changes in core affect, cause changes in somebody's emotional design. And that's what I would like to talk about today. So if we can induce the kind of emotions that reduce to all these positive outcomes, then we have a better product, and we're able to make it more enjoyable, and thereby opening cognitive resources and opening opportunities and the enjoyment for the product itself. So what are those design factors? We have emotional design factors through visual design, through interaction design, through playfulness, through poses, and through sound. And I want to talk about those a little bit today and focus on perhaps the first one with the visual design. Here we've done a lot of research that shows that warm colors and round shapes induce positive emotions. So when you have a look at these graphics here, you see when we look at the different types of colors in the color wheel that there's some of the warmer colors versus some of the cooler colors. If we design more with warm colors, we induce positive emotions. You see that this image in the middle, this is one of our games for stations. We use some warm colors, but of course not everything can be a warm color. They stick out if not everything is. We also see that round shapes are more effective than square shapes or other shapes in inducing positive emotions. In fact, there are some shapes that by design induce negative emotions because they have so jagged edges, etc. And so what we did in one study, and what you see on the right, there are all these different types of game characters that we designed, where we used round shapes and square shapes and warm colors and neutral colors. And we used also their facial expressions. You see that the game characters have different types of facial expressions. So if you have a game, you can use that as well. But in many EdTech products, we wouldn't have a game, so that's not the primary feature of visual design. But even the dimensionality, you see the top block is two-dimensional, is flat design. The bottom block is three-dimensional design, and that can have an effect on emotion as well. So we know then from our research that those round shapes and warm colors positive affect emotion and enhance and actually increase learning outcomes. Another example for interaction, for emotional design, is through the design of interactions. And that is something that, of course, every EdTech application has had. The interactions that you design. And for those who remember Angry Birds on the top right, there is this really enjoyable, very simple mechanic of putting a bird on the sling and pulling that sling back. And that sling mechanic itself is probably what got most people addicted to Angry Birds. And so that is interaction design, right? The enjoyable nature of that, and we call that situational interest in education and psychology. Situational interest is that the activity you're performing right now with your EdTech application is one that interests you, that excites you, that is enjoyable. And that situational interest might actually be for an activity where you don't have an individual interest. I might not like math, but I really like this particular math game. I have a high situational interest for this math game. And in time, research has shown that situational interest in a math game actually results in individual interest in math. If you had enough experiences where you enjoyed the activity doing math in a well-designed app or game or well-designed website, you can, over time, start enjoying math as well. And so whether that is through the design of guided activities, whether it is focus on the task design itself, if we design for interactions in a way that those themselves become enjoyable, they induce the positive emotions we talked about and can have the same positive results and effects that I've discussed earlier as far as broadening of the cognitive resources is concerned. Another item, and you see I'm talking a lot about games for learning, but playfulness is not limited to games. In fact, playfulness is what enhances almost every aspect of our lives. And so when we think about the design, even of simulations on the top right, those are simulations we designed for science learning, and they're also in the App Store for free. They're called StatSims. And those science learning simulations are playful in that when I want to take a sample, which is sampling on the right-hand side, those items are coming in from the top as if somebody pours them in. And if I change the sample, the bottom is getting pulled out and the items are falling out and flushed away. All of those are animated features that induce playfulness, that gives you a playful feeling, even though it is not a game. And so the idea that I can use playfulness in any kind of learning environment, in any kind of situation where I build an EdTech application, or really any application, is something that has been found to induce the same kind of positive emotions we've talked about, and thereby taking advantage of their effects on outcomes. So I make it playful, it is more enjoyable, and therefore I have the kind of outcomes that I'm hoping for, and enhance them without doing anything in addition. So playfulness is something that we have found can be applied to any kind of EdTech product by using animation, by using very small design changes that we would in the game world would call polish, where we really care about the user experience. And I'm not exclusively doing research on games. We're also doing virtual reality and other environments and explore how they can be used for learning. But the one thing that we have learned from games is that the focus on the user's experience in the games is something that we can learn for other environments as well. So the game designers focus on that polish, on making that experience the best and perfect experience, is something that when we look at other educational technology products, we often don't have the same focus. But if we did, we could get the same kind of benefits. So playfulness as one of the 5 ways of inducing emotional design. Another one that is actually surprising in some ways are poses. Research has shown that there are power poses where if you have even your body, your gestures in an open, high power design, as you see on the right, like you would use in some games that are able to detect your motions, or in some apps, those kind of poses induce more positive emotions than the low power design on the left, when your arms are close and you're very tight and you're not in this expansive physical pose as well. So we know from embodied design and embodied cognition that the body and the thinking are related. And so we actually see that here in this kind of research, that it also applies to the body and emotional connection. So if you have the opportunity to design something that doesn't always require to hold the phone like the person on the left is showing, but has kind of the opportunities to have gestures like on the right, if that is part of what you could do with your design, then that would be a useful thing. And even if it were just to take a break and do that as an activity. And finally, and that shouldn't come as a surprise, sound has an incredible effect on emotion. And we, of course, have to consider sound as part of the emotional design as well. And here are a number of different features that we're actually studying in our research, where we're asking what kind of music genre or level of pleasantness or dimensionality when it comes to mono stereo or 3D spatial audio, which we can use in virtual reality. How does the sound and specific features within the sound affect outcomes? And you notice I'm not saying music, even though I say musical genre. So this is not necessarily a soundtrack that has to run in the background, which sometimes works as an ambient sound. But it's also the question of what sound effects I'm using and how they sound and what kind of emotion they induce in us. And I'm just glancing at the chat, and somebody's asking the impact of smell. And that is a really interesting question. The reason why we haven't studied it is because in the digital space, smell is still a rather rare modality of information that we're conveying. And so it hasn't really come up, but it's only a question of time for that to be a big part of virtual reality environments where there's actually smell. And in that sense, we will definitely incorporate that into our design as well.